instead of starting one team, I ended up starting six real estate teams in my first year and a half in real estate. But I was a big lead generator, so I generated over 100,000 leads for my team. This is either going to work or it's not going to work, and if it doesn't work, we're all looking for them. If you build it, they will come. And so I kept on telling the team that, we're building this for the future leaders that actually recognizes what we built. What better group of people than real estate agents? I mean, these are risk takers.
Welcome back to the Reside Platform Podcast. Today's special guest is the one and only Glenn Sanford, the CEO, founder, and chairman of eXp World Holdings. Welcome, Glenn, to the Reside Platform Podcast.
Thanks, Nick. Hey, Suneet.
Yes, sir, man.
We're here with Suneet Agarwal, of course. Suneet, you have the first question.
Yeah, so I mean, we were talking offline a little bit, and for me, it's a huge inspirational honor to meet somebody like you who have done so much in the real estate space. So number one, that's super cool. Thanks for coming on. But let's just hear the quick origin story, because I think it's really awesome.
Well, the origin story of eXp is that, it came about as a result of my career in real estate. I started in real estate as an agent in 2002. I was actually on a team. And so I did that for 2 years. Then I started my own team in 2004 and then grew that. By 2006, that team was in the top 50 nationally with Keller. And in 2007, we went independent and ran our teamerage, our team-based brokerage, Buyer Tours Realty. I was a glutton for punishment, meaning one thing that I recognized. I actually got this out of, I think it was a bit out of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. Gary Keller and Dave Jenks had written that, and they talked about the fact that it took 5 years for people to become a good agent, it took 5 years for them to become good team leaders, it took 5 years for them to become good broker owners. I'm like, that's 15 freaking years. That's like way too long. So I was like, instead of starting one team, I ended up starting six real estate teams in my first year and a half in real estate. So I started the one that I started in Bellingham, Washington. And many people, recognize the name Ben Kinney, but Ben Kinney started in the office. When I left, the office basically imploded. That's how he became the owner of the office, because I was like so much of the volume. But I started a team in Bellingham, Seattle, Phoenix, Arizona, Portland, Oregon, Nashville, Tennessee, Long Beach, California. And then I had some smaller sort of satellite teams that we were just, we had one or two agents that wanted to sort of work on sort of the with the value prop that we were bringing to market. So we did that from 2004, really up until we launched eXp. But 2006, we did a little over 60 million in production, which was a lot back then. And then 2007, we did 73 million in production. In 2008, we were actually on a track to do about 100 million in production. And then the second half of 2008 hit. And at that point, I had put offices in. They were basically all just leased offices, but we had leased offices in multiple markets. October, I found out from my assistant indirectly, because she quit, and I was like, why the heck do you quit in the bottom of a housing market when you've got gainful employment? Well, it turned out that she was also managing my bank accounts, and my bank accounts were at zero, my credit cards are maxed. So she just didn't even want to deal with sort of letting me know that I was broke. But then I quickly raised $150,000 in the next couple of weeks to kind of get us into 2009, circled the wagons, got rid of 3 of the physical offices that we had, went to a skeleton crew on the 4th, and basically retooled in the first half of 2009. And 2009, I remember it was actually February 2009, we were in Scottsdale, Arizona. We had brought together our team leaders from our various teams, And one of the team leaders, our Seattle team leader, she asked, when do we get our offices back? Because we're all working virtually. And I'm like, we're not getting our offices back. We don't know how long the market's going to suck. That was my technical term for the market. And we've got to figure out a way to run a profitable real estate brokerage in a bad market. And the biggest cost to run a real estate brokerage is the bricks and mortar costs, followed closely by the staffing costs of an office. So for us, it's like if we'd kind of really streamlined there in 2009, but I was a big lead gen guy. So I generated over 100,000 leads for my teams. I was probably the number one SEO guy in the country. That's why we were number one for Seattle real estate on Google and Yahoo and Bing and all of that organically. I mean, Seattle's a very competitive market. We were number one in Las Vegas, number one in Nashville, number one in Bellingham, Washington, and number two in Phoenix. And I think actually number two in Phoenix, Gary Ashton was in front of us in Phoenix. There's a whole story there when I met him because we were competing for number one and number two. But I was kind of looking at it and going, is this scalable long term? Like, can I actually build a really future-proof business? Because Google kept on changing their algorithms every 6 months or so. And, and depending on what the algorithm change was, I might end up on page 2 or 3 and then had to, by hook or by crook, get myself back up to number one. Now, each time I was able to do it, and I believe fundamentally we could still do it today, but there's a lot of work that goes into sort of maintaining those top ranked websites. It's, whether it be on page, off page, speed of site, content, repeat visitors, stickiness, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that you just have to keep in mind. And said, there's no way we're going to outspend companies like Zillow, who would raise, $25-50 million, and Redfin had raised a bunch of money, and Realtor.com's out there, and they've got, fairly deep pockets, and I think they're a public company, Move, et cetera. So we said, we've got to pivot out of this. And I said, if we're not going to have physical offices and we're going to sort of grow a future business, why don't we build the real estate brokerage that I wanted to work for? Meaning, and what I mean by that is I started at Prudential, Berkshire Hathaway Effect today, because that was the rebrand that eventually took place. So I was there for 2 years, and then I went to Keller Williams, and I went to Keller Williams for this single fact, that two reasons. One, they were team friendly. I wanted to start a team. I hadn't started the team, but I'm going, hey, I should grow out there. They're team friendly. And then two was I saw their profit share system, and I'm going, okay, I can recruit agents. I got leads. I can do this anywhere in the country. I can use this as an exit strategy in real estate. If necessary, and build another stream of income. If my other thing quits working, I'll still have the profit share. And the long and short of it was that, at least for me, and this isn't the same for everybody, but at least for me, my profit share didn't match up with the recruiting brochure. So I had 184 people on my profit share group at Keller, and I got a whopping $6,000 in profit share for 2006. And I paid $105,000 into just one market center. So for me, that's why we went independent.
Sure.
But I remember when I walked out of the office that day, when I picked up my 1099 for my profit share, and I went back and I said to a couple of guys, Rob and Lauren, and I said, guys, if we ever build a company, we're going to do revenue share, not profit share. And I said, if you just take it off the top, you can put a halfway decent management team in place, and they'll figure out how to at least break even. And that was sort of my philosophy. And then 2009 came around, and we were saying, okay, if we're going to have people, you join a company that doesn't have physical offices, what's going to help them sort of like move from physical office to a virtual type environment? And for us, it was, well, we need to put revenue share in, because that would have motivated me. That would have, because I didn't go to the office that much anyway when I was at Keller, or a little bit more when I was at Prudential. But as I had matured as an agent, I just was out where the houses and the people were, and I was doing sort of deals and all that type of stuff. And I figured there's just a lot of people like me out there that are looking for an exit strategy. So that was kind of the origin story. We kicked it off in October 6th, 2009. My big motivational speech for the team was, everybody take your computers home with you. We're going to work remote like everybody else. It's not just going to be, not going to be just you. However, I see some kind of weird stuff going on. But I said to him, this is either going to work or it's not going to work. And if it doesn't work, we're all looking for work. So that was my big motivational speech. So, so that's what we did. And we launched it with, effectively 25 initial agents, but then we pulled the whole team in, we had 45, 50 agents, and then we kind of rolled from there.
So that's pretty amazing that I didn't realize that there was a point in the housing crash that you were maxed out. And at this point, depending on your net worth calculations, you probably don't figure it out that it's been said that there's 3 commas in your net worth based on stock valuations. So it's quite depending on the day, and the stock's doing quite well as we're talking about it right now. But so a team-friendly environment, a revenue versus profit share. Since 2009 with eXp, what has been a few milestones, or looking in hindsight, inflection points where it kind of the growth jumped? Was there certain events or people that influenced that?
Yeah, there were. I mean, we were growing incrementally. We never had a month where we had fewer agents than we had the month before, and we only had 2 months in our early days when we had the exact same number of agents as we did the month before. So we always were growing, and we could do the math that we were going to grow and get to some decent size over time. We sort of calculated that we were growing 50% year over year, and we figured that could take place for a long time, and so that could get us to a really large number. But we kind of built it kind of field of dreams style, which is if you build it, they will come. And so I kept on telling the team that, we're building this for the future leader that actually recognizes what we built. We need to just make sure that this thing is solid, that it's ready for them. And when they see it, this thing, we're going to really take off. And there were 2 things that took place. One was in 2013, we bought a public company and actually merged ourselves into it. So it's kind of like a SPAC, but but the SPAC had no cash. So it was just a shell. And then we merged ourselves into that. And so we controlled like 95% of the company, 93, 95% of the company on the merge. And then, and that we did that for the same.
Where did that idea come from?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Like that don't just that's like an important decision.
It was, yeah, no, it was. So in the 80s, actually, I think by 78, 79, I was like 11, 12 years old. My dad had actually, I'd given me a little bit of play money to invest in the stock market, Vancouver Stock Exchange back at the time. And so I played stocks when I was younger, and then my dad had sold his business when I got out of when I graduated high school, and then I ended up dropping out of college. In '87, I was actually managing a bar in Phoenix, Arizona.
That's a bit fun, at least. Yeah.
yeah. So I was just 21, and my dad came in, and his business partner came in, and I bought his business partner drinks or gave him drinks because I was managing the bar, and my dad didn't think that was a legitimate profession, and so he decided that I needed to become a stockbroker in Las Vegas, of all places. So I ended up moving to Las Vegas. I ended up basically working for a freaking boiler room. So if sort of a mini version of Wolf of Wall Street type firm.
Or Ben Affleck was your boss.
Yeah.
There you go. Or boiler room. Yeah. I worked there, and I only lasted about 6 months. I decided, man, just doesn't make any sense. We were getting like the big spips, as they talked about in the Wolf of Wall Street, where you get like 25% of the investment. But I was smiling and dialing airline pilots list, and I realized I'm selling crap, and so then I left. But I ended up through the next few years, probably till the 97, 98, my dad helped about 10 different companies actually reverse merge into small public companies. So basically what we did, none of them should have become public, like none of them. But they wanted to, and so anyway, I learned I learned a lot about the ins and outs of public companies. And so for me in 2013, one of my buddies I'd met back in the 90s, I said, hey, I want to issue shares to our agents, but we can't do it unless we're public. Can you get me a shell? And so we went through that. And I avoided 98% of the pitfalls of being a small public company. And that's because of my experience before. And so I was able to navigate that. We didn't need money, so we didn't raise money. We weren't, one of the big challenges that most companies have is they need to go out and raise money. And if you're a small public company, you're basically just, you're taking over the coals and you're going to be toast before you ever get into business. And then, so that was one. And then the other one was, you need to have a retail shareholder base, meaning you need shareholders who are willing to buy and hold your stock during those early days. And for me, it was like, what better group of people than real estate agents? I mean, these are risk takers sort of at heart. And so all those ingredients sort of came together. And then in 2014, we actually put together our stock plan for agents, and in late 2014, and that was when we got on the radar of folks like Gene Frederick. So Gene was the number one recruiter at Keller for three of the last 10 years when he joined us. And so Gene joined us because we offered equity, and he says nobody else does that. I can sell that, and so he joined us. A bunch of other people joined us. 2015 was the first year we doubled in size year over year. We went from 400 to 800 agents. 2016, we went from 800 agents to 2,400 agents. Then we went from 2,400 to 8,000. Then we went to 8,000 to whatever. Anyway, 16, 20,000. But anyway, it was the hockey stick ramp. So the public company piece was a big piece to it because it gave me a tool that nobody else had, which is, I'm going to give you equity.
Yeah.
It was a brilliant marketing piece because it was agent owned, the headlines, agent owned brokerage, hybrid. And then you, as you dove into it, it was rev share. It was all of these other things. And then it was all about the growth. Everyone was just head turning left and right every day on Facebook. It was something new, someone new. Guess who's coming next?
Yeah.
It was just,
you guys really did it right.
Mm-hmm.
It was like something I had never seen yet in real estate. I think that's great, man. The marketing and the offer, you nailed it. Let me ask you, were you an SEO guy first, lead guy first, or a real estate guy first?
I was a SEO guy first. So I was, and remember my story about being a stockbroker back in '87. I was also an individual investor myself, as a stock guy. So I've been a kind of an individual investor for a long time. Not a big investor, but I enjoy it. And in about 91, 92, I was posting my stock picks onto Prodigy and America Online, and I got a reputation because I was probably the number one stock picker on any of those platforms at the time. So I was using had a very solid stock selection methodology. It's still one I use today, but I was using it. And so AOL actually asked me if I would manage their financial bulletin boards and chat groups. And so at that time, I was going to university a second time. I dropped out again, but I was going to University of Oklahoma, and I was spending about 4 hours a day in the library, um, basically reading the financials, pulling anything that I could find on the companies that were on my short list, figure out which ones on the short list I wanted to actually, take a shot at, and then I would post these stock pieces onto Prodigy and America Online. And so AOL reached out and said, "Hey, would you manage the financial bulletin boards and chat rooms?" I said, "Sure." And so I became a contract employee of AOL,
That's
and
so cool.
it sounds way better than it was. Basically, at the time, it was like, I forget what AOL charged per hour to be online, but it wasn't cheap to be online. And so I got free AOL, unlimited AOL, and that was my payment for managing their bulletin boards and chat rooms. But what ended up happening from there was, I people would ask me how I knew so much about stocks. And I said, "Hey, I used to be a stockbroker." And they said, "If you ever become a stockbroker again, let us know. We'd love to open accounts with you." And I had like tons of people. I mean, these are the sort of the who's who investing crowd on AOL, because my stock picks were like rock solid. So I ended up becoming a stockbroker, studying for my Series Second a second time, and my 63, and then becoming a stockbroker. And and I was literally opening up accounts left and right. And so for me, it was all about aggregating eyeballs, building an inbound funnel, and then letting that funnel sort of sort itself out on its own terms. And then those who were interested in doing business with me, they would end up in my database, and I'd work with them as their stockbroker. And so I was able to basically grow to, $500,000 under management in literally a month. It normally took the average stockbroker, 6 to 12 months minimum to get a 500,000 under management. And I was doing it sort of almost in my sleep because of sort of this marketing piece. So for me, I was all about online marketing. Then I started an online service called, a few years later, called Interactive Cafe, which became the largest online service in Western Canada. Then the internet, the web, kicked my butt because we were an online service, and the web changed the game. And then I started to learn web development, and then I had a company called Online Promotions, which was a PR service for small public companies. So you can kind of see that there's that small public company thing in there. So I built one of the first web-based news services for public companies. And then sometime in that time frame, somebody asked me if I'd write a business plan for the web, the internet. And I said, "Okay, well, you pay me." I told them, "Pay me $5,000 a month, give me 3 months, I'll write a business plan." And so I did. I wrote a business plan for a company called eshippers.com. And it was an outsourced e-commerce logistics company, and we partnered with United Van Lines and Mayflower Transit to do pick and pack fulfillment for small to mid-sized manufacturers and retailers. Anyway, that crashed and burned in the .com collapse of 2000, and by the end of 2001, I was licking my wounds, moved back to the Pacific Northwest, and sort of said, "What am I going to do next?" And then I had a number of community-based websites that I was running for chambers of commerces, and then I was selling ads to people, and one of the people that I sold an ad to was a realtor. So I was doing a lot of that, online marketing long before, and before real estate. So I was an online marketer that knew that what would work in real estate, and that's how I kind of got into it.
That's so what a roundabout way to get in there, right? Everyone has those stories. Yours is another great one. So thank you for sharing that. I love that roundabout way.
Yeah, I've never heard that background, Glenn, on your technical prowess and your depth of the web and pre-web and technology. You're obviously into devices, technology, hacking lifestyle, kind of that technology. I'm curious though, there was a mastermind a couple of years ago with Matt Wagner at Rate, and you presented. And I actually sat next to you for 20 minutes while you were getting ready to go on stage. And of the entire presentation, there's one section that stood out to me. It had to do with incentives. And I said to myself, Glenn understands incentives in human behavior and how incentives drive human behavior. Was I picking up on that thread? And how do you think about incentives in the real estate space? Because it's obvious you found it. I don't know if that was through trial and error.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was trial and error. I'll tell you, I mean, I'm telling you some stories that I don't know if I've made it out in the industry at all. But
Cool.
my dad and I, when I was a kid, he was a successful business person through, then he sold his business to Kellogg's. He ended up losing all of his money eventually. But we talked a lot about human behavior relative to compensation and all of these other things. And so, what I realized was there's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs by nature, but the vast majority are more into safety. So meaning they need to sort of trust the system. But if you give, and they're actually, the masses are actually more motivated by token incentives than big incentives, which is kind of a weird thing to think about. So
Right.
there's certain people who are motivated by big incentives, and they are your type A personalities, like your type A,
Like Gene Frederick.
right, Gene Frederick, high D's. They're not going to do something unless there's a massive reward on the other side. They also know their abilities and all of those types of things, but the masses don't ever want to be bought, meaning they want to be there because it makes sense for them to be there, regardless of the financial piece. But if you provide token items of value, which is, if you think about it, what is a trophy? If you get a Remax trophy, what is that? That's a token item of value, right? And it keeps people there. But the masses are actually geared toward, like, striving toward the token items of value more so than the money. So for us, like we did things like we introduced the first, like the stock piece. Most of the stock is fairly token. Like your first transaction, you get $200 worth of stock on a 3-year vest. You're not going to get rich on the stock, right? If you cap as an agent at eXp, you get $400 worth of stock. If you recruit another agent to eXp and they do a deal, you get $400 worth of stock. But they're kind of like points on a credit card points program. You start getting these and you start to actually modify your behavior over time in very subtle ways until you start to kind of get into the groove of it. You go, hey, this is pretty cool. I didn't know I had $50,000 worth of stock that I accumulated over the last 5 years in this company. And you open up your account and go, oh my God, like this is pretty darn cool. But then you've got the other side, which, where they were like, I'm here because I got Icon Awards. I want to actually get, hundreds of thousands of dollars potential in revenue share and other benefits per year. And like last year, I think we paid out over $200 million in revenue share and equity. And
Wow.
but most of this was still paid to the general population agents. These were agents who picked up an agent here or there, and then we've got some superstars who have turned it into a massive success that's more successful than owning a large group of successful real estate offices.
Yes.
Yep.
So on the incentive, and if you were running a team again, your 2004 days, 2005, in today's environment, 2024, what type of incentives would you put in place? Because right now, teams need to get their agents to produce and call the leads and do the actions we ask them to do. How do you incentivize them to do that? Because apparently making a commission check's not enough sometimes.
It's not. I'm saying that I say it's not. I think about this on a team. When I brought in my first team member, and let's just say typical team, every team's going to be a little plus or minus, but you bring in your team, it's 50-50, right? When they do a deal, you get, you're the team leader, you're going to get 50% of their commission. but they're getting a lot of mentorship from you. Like you're like, they're learning from the guy or the gal, right? And then you bring in another agent, and it's a very small group. It's very intimate, 50-50, not a big deal. There's some, there's a lot of data around once you get above about 5 to 7 people in any sort of organization, you actually it starts to lose its value. That just the fact that you're working with me no longer is as valuable to you when your team's at 12, 13, 15 people. And you're also not able to hold them as accountable because you're not sitting with them and really intimate with each of them, because you only have so much bandwidth as a team leader. So this is so there's a couple things that go on here. One, scarcity of time, and the other one is a perception of fairness. There was a guy years ago, Evan Pagan. He did a video on an experiment around fairness. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard this one, but you heard about the experiment where the researcher puts $100 on the table. There's 2 people at the table. One person gets to divide the $100, and the other person gets to say if it's fair. And if he says it's fair, then they both walk away with money that they wouldn't have had otherwise. You guys heard about this?
Mm-hmm.
I have not, but let's hear it.
Dive into it.
Yeah. So obviously the researcher sticks $100 on the table, and let's just say Suneet and Nick, you guys are at the table there, and then Suneet, you divide it 50-50. Nick, are you going to say that's fair?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yes.
Probably. So you guys will part friends, will each $50 richer. Now let's say Suneet, you're going, well, I could probably take 60 and Nick could have 40, right?
Oh, right. Because it's free money to me. I wouldn't have got it otherwise. Is that the...
Exactly. It's free money. You wouldn't have got, so Nick, are you going to take the $40 and let Suneet take 60?
Yeah. I mean, if this game doesn't repeat itself, like, cause in game 3, there's a repetition, maybe if I think it's a one-time deal, I might say, Suneet, I don't like the split that much, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So it turns out that this split actually exists up until about 80-20, where it actually starts to break down.
Oh,
So,
really?
so even though at $18 for you, Nick, new money, you can't stand the fact.
I would rather get nothing. I would rather get
I'd
nothing.
rather get nothing than see Suneet walk off with $88. And they've done this experiment all over the world. They started in the U.S. They figured, well, maybe it's just because they're rich kids or just whatever. But they did it in third world countries where $100 actually, $20 would represent like a month's wages for something. Turns out the percentages are hardwired in our DNA. Once it goes about 80%, it'll get turned down no matter where in the world you do this experiment. And why that's important, and this is why this was something I'd learned, and we actually did some stuff on the team stuff to actually make this make sense, is when we started to see the team break down at about 12, 13, 14, 15 age, we always have this like group of defectors that would leave and go somewhere else and then start their own team or whatever. They almost always crash and burn. But we realized that there's a fundamental, like a DNA challenge with just the way we think about large numbers of people, what we think fairness represents. So we started to actually dive into that in 2008, 2009 with our team. We actually put together a program that actually was actually getting a lot of momentum, and we thought it was going to scale quite well. And what we did is we said, what if once we start to get to these breakpoints where we saw natural breakpoints, instead we made the split better for the agents on the team. Based on the number of closings being done and the number of agents doing deals, they would go from 50-50 to 47.5 for the team and 52.5 for agents on the team. And when it got to 20 or 25, I remember I've got the spreadsheet, but we had basically the stair step. As the team got larger, it got better. And I'd ran the spreadsheets. I knew what my lead costs were, I know my staffing costs were, all my technology costs were, all this other stuff. So I knew that as the team scaled, I could actually make it economically better for my team members. And they would actually they would actually earn more as the team got larger. The other objection that I heard quite often was, we don't want more agents on the team because we don't want less leads. And we knew fundamentally that they were getting more leads than they could handle. And it was actually a problem, too many leads is actually a problem, not a benefit for agents. If you give them fewer leads, they'll actually work the leads harder and they'll actually get more net closings per month out of a smaller number of leads than they will if they're getting like 200 leads a month. They just getting 200 leads a month can't actually follow up with them in a meaningful way. And they hope that somebody just calls them up and says, I want to buy a house. Nobody does, but they're trying to keep all 200 happy and build no great relationships with any of them. So, so this also solved for some of that dynamic. When people joined the team, the leads were getting spread out more, but that helped as well. So if I was going to go back and use sort of the incentives and sort of the way people mentally process, large teams and those types of things, I would basically work on a declining split with the team members.
And that would probably need to change year by year based on your budgets and your break-even points. Once you kind of fulfill your fixed costs, obligations, and the team's actually in the profit market, kind of in the black, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't let your lead costs, your marketing costs or your lead costs cost more than 10% of your GCI. So I kind of played with the idea that if your lead cost 10%. And your staffing costs cost 10%, then anything above that was margin, depending on your bricks and mortar. So you wouldn't want to run less than say a 35% to the team leader type environment. But I think you could build it large enough. And as long as you're continuing to optimize your lead generation costs, I mean, there's so many ways to generate leads.
And also optimizing for your token incentives. Optimizing for your recognitions and your awards and your point systems and the point system for a reward incentive.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I don't think a lot of teams do that internally. They the only leaderboards they have are leaderboards for accountability and prospecting, right? They're not really a leaderboard for you to take a point and then turn it in for a stuffed animal, right? Like you're playing skeet ball and you're playing all these circus games to turn in your tickets.
Yes.
What question do you have?
Man, so a lot. We were talking with John earlier, Chet Black. Man, we got Glenn Sanford on, John. Like, give me some ideas. You guys know each other. So he gave us some, and then I put my own little spin on them. Does that work?
Sure. Yeah. And I noticed my earbuds were making a little sound in the background.
No, you sound great.
I'm hoping they last a little bit longer. So.
Oh,
yeah. So market is interesting right now without talking about any of the craziness out there. Right. What's your best advice for agents and teams right now?
The market's got beaten up dramatically since 2001, 2002, 2003. It got beat up quite a bit. But you notice like today, or was it today or yesterday, the Fed basically suggested that there's going to be some rate increases, the decreases next year. That we might see three potential rate decreases, which means that, coming into March, April, May next year, I think we're back in the selling season. If you weathered the last 12, 24 months, you're going to actually be in a position, if you've been managing your database, staying in touch with people, doing all that stuff, you actually have, and hopefully you've managed your costs quite a bit in the last 2 years. I mean, you weren't cutting costs, you were an idiot. But if you did all that, then this next year, you should start to actually see things that, turn the corner. Like, you talked to John and been involved with some masterminds with him, and he has more of a view on team-based P&Ls than anybody else. And a bunch of the teams obviously have not been making money the last year and a half or so.
Yeah.
But you weather the storm for when things get better. And I don't think we're very far away from things actually improving and actually being able to, if you got the systems, if you've been doing the things that you need to be doing, next year should be a year where things, you're not feeding the business should start feeding you again.
Yeah, and by weathering the storm, it's not like hunker down and do nothing.
No, it's you have to. So problem is when the market's really hot, like 2001 was
Mhm.
that, and two, and or 2021, 2020, it was crazy. Like you couldn't, if you didn't make money in those markets, you obviously were doing something entirely wrong. Um, but the problem with those markets is you tend to spend as much as you bring in, and that's just human
Yeah.
nature. We just and so you go and you buy the new car, you get the new office, you sign the new lease, you hire the new employees, you sign up for some new fancy dancy lead generation package from the evil empire or whoever, and you, and then the market turns and you aren't prepared for it. So the phrase is, we've all heard the phrase, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And the market is what can fool you the first time. But if you went through 2008, if you went through 2020, 2022, 23, and you didn't get your house in order because you saw it happen, then the next time it comes down, which it will, then it's on you. So the whole idea is, take these opportunities to learn how to run real businesses and become really efficient. The benefit of a down market is it gives you a backdrop to be able to cut costs, and your team will allow you to do it. Like
That's
because
true.
they know the economy is in rough shape, so they'll give you permission. But if you cut in a good market, that they'll jump ship and go to the next team. So you want to cut your costs in a bad market, take advantage of the gift that was given to you, so that when you get to the other side, you don't have to increase costs as rapidly. But you're in much better shape to actually sort of weather the next storm.
Yeah,
I love that. So relative. I lost my butt in 2008. I was in subprime mortgage. I had a bunch of cool toys and cars and houses and poof. So yeah, fool me twice, shame on me. Love that perspective.
now one thing that I respect and learn from John Sheplack, and I know Suneet, myself, and Preston, a part of Reside, adopted this, is that we stay as close as we can to our clients and being in the trenches and doing the work and understanding what's going on, boots on the ground. And I've noticed the same. I noticed the same thing about you, Glenn, at the highest level as a CEO. There's other CEOs that are in their ivory tower and they never come down. And they put together their C-suites and they put together all these different layers. But for some reason, we still see you at masterminds with your notebook
Yes,
and
sir.
traveling around. And I would like to get your thought on that. Was that a conscious decision, or is that just something you're energized in, or is it a part of your strategy?
Yeah, it is part of a strategy. The one thing that a lot of people talk about is that it becomes lonely at the top, and the
Yes.
reason why it becomes lonely is because you put in all those management layers and you get away from the people that you're actually trying to serve. And so the nice thing is I'm still tight with. I'm answering messages all day from agents all over the country at every level of production,
Wow.
from brand new to running mega teams, and then trying to figure out things. Now I can't. I certainly can't solve it. Most of it's just I'm playing traffic cop. I'm saying, hey, go talk to this person. Go talk to this person. Maybe they can solve it. And then I'll jump in on one or two that are kind of unique. That I'm like, okay, I've got a perspective. I think I can add some value here. But I stay pretty close to everything that's going on. But there is I call it being a business nerd or geek. I do have to spend a lot of time sort of working on the business and making sure that the layers actually think like business people. Um, because left to our own devices, the larger you get, the more bureaucratic you become. And that's just that. So for me, it's like I have to basically work on creating systems to stamp out bureaucracy, because a large size organization just there ends up being layers that are necessary, but then there's layers that you have to get rid of, and then you also have to like keep on replacing people who are like maybe not operating in this sort of agent first philosophy.
Yeah, man. it can be hard to stay there as you grow. I mean, I know that at my little scale, I can't imagine your scale, right? Like, hats off to you. And Nick, that was my next question I was going to read off. So you just took my next question. Good.
Do you have the, do you have another question, Suneet, and then we can wrap it up? Because I know.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that this is a great final question is December 31st, 2024. Mr. Glenn Sanford, who is going to be the agent that is standing there triumphant saying, I had a great year?
This is a business. I think about the real estate business as operating in quarters. And what I mean by that is that if you're running a large team at scale, might be a little bit different, but most of us aren't. Most of us are doing fairly small. Maybe we've got a small team, et cetera, which means that at the beginning of every year, so December 1st, 2020 or January 1st, 2024, you need to have a plan of action for the next 30 days that you're going to put in place for the whole team that you're going to execute against. And I think about the idea that, and then at the end of 30 days, you're going to be seeing how did that all work out? Did it present the results? And are you harvesting the benefits from all of that hard work? And then that's sort of the next 30 days. And the 30 days after that is sort of thinking about what your game plan is going to be for March 1st. Or April 1st. So I think about these things. I think, how do you basically go from quarter to quarter to quarter to quarter and kind of build the momentum, go in, see what's working, see what's not, replace it, and then go into the next quarter with another game plan, another game plan. And if you do that, then you will come out at the end of the year going, I had a great year. I think that if you don't take the time to think about it in some sort of chunk, for me, it was a quarter. It was a 90. I noticed that every 90 days I had to go back and retrench and recreate momentum and put in systems and then recognize what worked, what didn't work, fix it, and go to the next quarter. And if you do that, you can't help but win. But if you take your eye off the ball and you say, hey, we're just going to keep on doing what we're doing the entire year through, and we're not going to change or evaluate where we're at or take time to measure. By the end of the year, you'll probably be suffering a bit because I think you're going to take those points of time and measure and tweak and pivot. And you need to do that at a fairly constant interval. And so if you do that, you'll do great. You don't, it's going to be a little iffy.
Dude, I love that advice. I think that resonates with everybody trying to do anything. Fitness, right? Which a lot about health and longevity and education. Like that's great. So if people want to reach out to you to learn more about you or join eXp, what's the best way for people to get in touch? Or
well, I mean, I'm on all the social platforms for sure. So I do check from time to time the various messages coming in there. So you can certainly connect there. If you're interested in eXp specifically, you can certainly go to join.exprealty.com, and there's some stuff there you can learn about the company. Of course, it's pretty hard not to find a real estate agent who loves eXp. So, and if you don't call them, they'll call you anyway. So,
yeah. So if you want to learn more about eXp, check your email.
There you go.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being on. I got a lot out of it. Like I said, it's a real honor to get this time with you and hear your inspirational story. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's next too, man.
Good stuff. Thanks, Nate. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right. Well, I hope you guys got something out of this episode. And if you did, like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next episode of the Reside Platform Podcast.